Good morning, good evening, good night. I'm Naomi Toland, your host for Empathetic Educators, and I am so excited to have this lineup today with our Q&A with Barbara Oakley and our co-host Lauren Kaufman. Let's get ourselves started. So like I said, we're coming in with a Q&A with Barbara Oakley today, and it's really great to have her on the show because we've been looking at the interview that I did with her last year or 2 years ago maybe now, and looking at her book, Learning How to Learn as well. So that's been really, really great to actually weave it all together with Barbara coming back on the show. And for Empathetic Educators Tree of Life, we look at all things growth, relationships, accountability, challenge, and this season has been all about systems. So it's really, really great to bring people on the show today to talk about neuroscience, psychology, all about the systems of the body, but also the systems of schools too. So I am just so excited to get this show on the road. Let's get our first co-host on the show with us now to get them on the screen. Welcome back, Lauren.
Hi! It's so great to be here. I love being on Empathetic Educators Live with you, Naomi, and I continue to cherish our connection. I am so excited about all the things you have going on with Empathetic Educators. I loved that recent Empathetic Educators e-magazine that you put out. How exciting. Visually, it was so appealing. The content that you had in there was incredible. And I love seeing Stephanie Rothstein's first guest blog post. And I'm excited that you asked me to write one for the magazine. So I can't wait for that.
Yeah, lots of exciting things happening on Empathetic Educators at the minute. I'm just loving it. I'm loving the community across the world. We have people on here today from the UK, from across America, across Canada, and just really cool to have that weaving process with everything coming on and coming together as well. So we even have Mel coming on, saying hello, and she says, "So early for you, Naomi," and it actually is. I'm just awake. So and it's so nice to have people across the world coming in too. And we got Steph. Steph says, "Yay, thank you for the compliment from well. So just before we start, actually, I'm just going to put up a little visual because we do have people on the show coming on asking questions. So we have Single Girl, we have Phil, we have Andrea coming on. But we also have a position at the end of the show for the audience to ask a question too. So just a little reminder of people who are joining in the conversation. If you want to think about your question as we're speaking, or if you have any questions you would like to ask Barbara Oakley herself as well, then just think about that and you can add into the chat because we're going to look at those questions at the end too. So just have a little think as we come along. So yeah, that's exciting to have Stephanie and Mel on the chat and then having you as co-host as well, Lauren. So thank you so much for coming and joining us again.
Of course, it's always a pleasure and an honor to be here with you.
And without further ado, let's get our guest on the show we're going to be picking her brain today and asking lots of questions. So welcome Barbara onto the show and to Empathetic Educators.
I'm so glad to be here. I'm so glad you're going to be picking my brain instead of other things. So
I have to tell you, Barb, it's so nice to meet you today. I have been reading your book, Learning How to Learn, a guide for kids and teens. And I'm new to neuroscience, and you really made the language in this book so accessible for everybody, not only for kids and teens, but for adults who don't have a lot of background and knowledge on this topic. So I was intrigued by so much, pretty much everything I have highlighted in this book, even though you said not to highlight too much. I started highlighting so much, and I can't wait to share this with more educators and my learners as well. I think it's so important to understand how the brain works and how we learn. So thank you for writing this book.
Oh, it's my pleasure, and my co-author Terry and Alistair McConville was also really helping us to put it in kids' language as well as adult speak. But when you simplify something well enough, it really becomes valuable for all ages. So that's really what we were aiming at. And it's simply relaying the great work of researchers, but just trying to put it in visual terms that are kind of fun so that everybody can understand it.
It is great. And that's what I love about the course as well, for learning how to learn like the MOOC too, like online. It's just like those visuals that come in. And I can even see like the audience members who like aren't in just yet. They're nodding their head. They're like, yep, we really enjoyed like being part of that as well. So like having the book and also like that online course is just so great to have as well. So we actually have Danielle coming in from Northern Ireland. Woohoo! Represent. Yeah, she said like really enjoying what you're doing as well in that space too. So yeah, so really great to get this conversation started and get this picking your brain and nothing else, Barb, what's going on in the show today. So we're going to start off getting Lauren off the screen. That's part of the process. I'm not too. I love doing it. Kind of kick her off, and then I kick me off and kick you back on again. So let's get our first guest. You will. Get our first guest coming on. We've got Phil coming onto the screen today for our first conversation. Welcome on, Phil.
Hi, thank you.
Let's know a little bit about you, about your background, a little bit about what you've been doing. It's really great to connect with people. Like me and Lauren did a little post about the power of the hashtag. And one of the things I love about this is actually looking at people who are interested in the person that I'm interested in as well. And you've done lots and lots of research and lots of work with Barbara Oakley's work as well. So it's really good to connect with you on screen too. So yeah, let us know a little bit about you, a little bit about your background.
Sure. I'm currently the math department head at an independent school in Vancouver, an all-girls independent school. And 3 years ago, I started a position at the school as a research chair where I got to pick an area of interest and do a deep dive into it. And I picked how do we learn and what are those impacts on mathematics education, specifically for high school kids. And so really started implementing more retrieval practice and interleaving more with intentionality, much more mixed practice, and really redesigned a curriculum for my students and started teaching other teachers at my school about some of these impacts of neuroscience. And that's where I'm at today. I met Barbara really quickly at the Learning in the Brain Institute, the conference in Boston before COVID shut us all down. And I've been working with Mark McDaniel and kept in contact with Pooja Garwal as well, just to bounce ideas off of them in this realm of the impacts of what's happening in a lab and how we bring big R and small r together.
Cool. Lots of insights in there. And I love the fact that, because I've met Barbara in New Zealand as well, whenever she came and spoke in the practice for us too. And it's just, I love that connectedness of the world, even though we're all in different spaces right this second. It's just so cool to have like that common link and that common passion. Like you say, like whenever Lauren was putting the book up, it's like, I love that link that we can all have, even though we are across the world too. So yeah, it's really nice to hear your story about that as well.
Yeah, and of course I've read the book and done the MOOC, and yeah, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Well, yeah, if you want to ask us the question that you are interested in, and let us. I'm really interested actually in this question because I've been thinking about this myself too. So yeah, have a little. Go ahead. The floor is yours.
So as I said, the school that I'm at, we've been using some of this these impacts of neuroscience, but one of the places that we're still struggling with, we read things from, say, Alfie Cohen and Dylan Williams about how to move away from a grades-based culture and move towards a learning culture. And so I guess I'm wondering what your thoughts are on using extrinsic motivation like points and grades versus really focusing on the growth and the feedback with students.
Is it possible I can share my screen?
I think you can. Yeah, you can press. We've never had this before, Barbara. This is the first one for me too. Go ahead. If you can press share at the bottom.
Okay, because actually I just got to thinking about it and I thought, if I let's see, it says share screen. So let's see. Okay, so you probably are seeing, okay, there you're seeing me. Okay, entire screen. And
yes.
And what I want to share is, can you see This
Woohoo!
little.
Oh, I've never done this before. This is great.
So do you see this?
Yes, we do.
Okay, so we're all driving down the freeway. And Phil, I am actually going to get back to answering your question, so don't worry. Even though it seems like we're just driving down a freeway, but imagine that you're driving home, and you suddenly remember you've driven home a million times before, but you remember that you had forgotten your friend's birthday party, which is tomorrow. So suddenly you begin thinking about, oh my goodness, what am I going to get my friend? What can I do at the last minute? And you're thinking about this, and suddenly you pull into your driveway and you're home. And the question is, does this involve learning? And to answer that question, I'm just going to give you just a faint little view, because this is going to lead right back around to how I'm going to address the question you posed, which is a really good one. And in essence, the brain learns through two major highways that flow through the brain. One goes from working memory in the front of the brain. This is the declarative system. And it goes through the hippocampus and puts those sets of links of neural learning in long-term memory. The other system, highway, so to speak, is the procedural system. It goes through this cluster of things right in the middle of your brain called the basal ganglia, and it deposits sets of links in long-term memory. So when I'm explaining something to you, I'm explaining it declaratively. When you're practicing a zillion times and not even thinking about it, you're learning procedurally. So it turns out that you need both kinds of learning in order to be able to be successful when you're learning a language, when you're learning math, when you're learning sports, when you're learning pretty much anything. So declarative sets of links, those arise in long-term memory because you've listened carefully to an explanation. Procedural sets of links grow through lots and lots of practice. So active practice is what builds this procedural sets of links. Some people like to learn declaratively, and people with dyslexia often tend to learn more declaratively. People with on the autism spectrum disorder tend to learn maybe a little bit more procedurally. Ultimately, you want people learning as much as you reasonably can through both mechanisms, but what you learn procedurally, you can't explain. So a kid can really understand how to do something mathematically, not be able to explain it, and you're thinking, well, then they don't know it because they can't declare their learning, but they can know it inside and out, and you can actually destroy their interest in the material if you force them to always explain every step, because this procedural system is the one that recognizes patterns and sort of sees and puts things together and helps you react very quickly. So when you eliminate rote learning, for example, in math with patterns of multiplication tables and so forth, by calling it, maybe you might call it drill and kill and disparage it, you're actually eliminating that habitual procedural system that allows you to do things without even thinking about it. So rather than say drill and kill, I always say it's much better to drill and skill. Now, so stopping sharing, and now I'll just answer your question as quickly as I reasonably can, given what we've just discussed. When you're learning something through that procedural system, you need feedback. And for example, a grade on a test helps you learn through that system. And the more delayed the feedback is, the harder it is for a student to learn. So let's say that they got something wrong on, they just did a problem and they got it wrong. And you say, well, I'm not going to explain that to you. Let's see what everybody else. Well, you're delaying that feedback, and you're actually preventing the procedural pattern recognition system from learning effectively. So, actually points and grades, too much emphasis on grades is going to have all sorts of pernicious effects. We know that. We know that students will not go into STEM if they think it's harder, and they're going to get worse grades and so forth. But on the other hand, you can throw the baby out with the bathwater, because we know that testing is one of the most effective ways to help students learn. If you give an hour of testing, that slight stress of the test actually increases glucosteroids that help the student really get the concept and learn it better. And that hour on a test, as opposed to an hour just sitting there studying, they will learn a lot more. So feedback is important, but grades and especially points are part of feedback. So, and all of this can help you grow.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Oh, that was that. My brain literally was like, that's so like we had loads of people coming on the chat saying like I feel like I learned so much. This is really tied into like the question that we're trying to ask in schools as well. And I'm like, I love that. So like asking for reflections, so like say for example our learners, whenever we're saying to them reflection is really important, but actually getting them to continually try and explain their learning, you're saying that might make them not as interested in the conversation as well, because you're asking them to go to two different parts of the procedure. Is that right?
That's a way of putting it. For example, let's say that we always think that procedural learning is only with motor skills, but now we understand it's with mental skills as well. So let's say that you asked a kid to hit a baseball, and they had to explain every step as they're doing it. You would kill their ability. And in fact, in sports, when you start thinking about the movement, you're actually going to pull yourself off. And like if you're doing a golf stroke, you're going to pull yourself off and not do as well if you're thinking consciously about it. Likewise, in mathematics, if you have to stop and think consciously of every step you are doing when you're solving an algebra problem or taking a derivative in math, you're actually crippling students to get ability to gain that automaticity where they just know what to do without they can't explain it, but they know it, they really know it, and you can actually cripple their fun in learning by asking them to explain every single step all the time.
That's cool. It's a great takeaway for me what I'm trying to. Yeah, it's really, really good. Phil, what are your takeaways from what we've just been talking about?
Yeah, it's definitely something to think of. We have the kids up at whiteboards quite often, and we get them to collaborate and explain, but we do give them plenty of time to practice and try to get that automaticity up. And I can certainly see both sides of this. It's certainly working. You were mentioning, kids with autism or, other kind of, we call them individualized education plans, other kinds of plans that they may have to help different students who learn slightly differently. I can certainly see, trying to get them to explain too much being a negative drawback for them to actually just be able to show what the mathematics is that they can do as well. So.
Right. And one thing that is sometimes erroneously discouraged in teaching mathematics is they will say, oh, no, time drills are very bad because they will stress the students. It's the opposite of what neuroscience is showing. What neuroscience shows is a little stress actually helps you think faster. And indeed, studies have shown that people who have the lowest stress in their lives, they're not cognitively as sharp. So a little stress actually kind of increases your cognitive abilities. But practicing with speed, what that simply does is build that procedural fluency. So you can do these things without having to think about them. And that means your declarative memory and your declarative learning can actually be thinking and tackling the tougher things because you got the other stuff. You don't even need to worry about it.
And so this would tie into cognitive load theory?
Yes, in the sense that not that cognitive load theory actually really talks much about procedural learning in general. It simply talks about working memory.
Okay.
But certainly Sweller would be right on board with, what's going on as far as creating sets of links, whether in through the procedural or the declarative system. You want to have really good sets of links, because however you are drawing that into working memory, if you've got the sets of links out there, it's going to reduce that working memory load.
I think it's like Karen, the whole Karen's one as well. Like, it's like not to stress the kids out, but building that muscle memory in the brain as well. So like, we don't want to get them in a stress mode too much, because like we know they can't learn up, like they can't learn, but then actually getting them a little bit stress is important too. So it's that balance between what type of stress are they in. It's a really important thing to be part of. And I think for me, like that question that you have asked, Phil, like using extrinsic motivation. Is there something in the brain? Because like I've seen like learners who, like, obviously not sticker, but like if you are kind of using it as like a goal or something that you're working towards. So like if you play games, you're trying to achieve up the level, and you're trying to, like, that is extrinsic motivation, but you are intrinsically part of it as well. So is there like part of the brain that is motivated by extrinsic motivation? Like that's something I've been thinking about recently. Is that?
So I know that gamification has been, everybody's talked about gamification for years. And the problem with gamification is that they are really onto something. It's a really difficult thing to do. For example, if you're trying to incorporate games into learning math, it is the equivalent of trying to figure out how to take broccoli and put chocolate on it and make it taste good together. That's actually from Daphne Bavelier, who's one of the leading researchers in this area. But it's, it's really, the reality is that these, like a little bit of a ding, 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 like a happy sound, or you get a little button, or what those little tiny wins do every time you get one because you got something right. Whatever the neural pathway was that led to that nice sound or the rewarding feeling, your dopamine system, as soon as you get that little reward thing, the dopamine goes, okay, release all the dopamine, and it lets it go. And every place that the neurons have been active that got you to that path, it will help build those sets of links and strengthen them. So those little tiny rewards, the gamified rewards, they actually are super helpful in allowing kids. And it's so hard to build a game but on the other hand, think of this. There's a process in video games called grinding. And what grinding is, for those of you who aren't video gamers, I'm not a video gamer, but I can pretend to be one. And it's just doing a really stupid, boring, repetitive thing over and over and over again, because then it'll give you the points you need to be able to, scale some mountain or whatever. Isn't that what we're doing in learning with a lot of, like, you're teaching piano? Oh, it's kind of a grind sometimes to play the same thing over again. You're teaching a foreign language. Well, it's kind of a grind sometimes. In math, somehow, leaders in math reform education are like, yeah, but math is completely different than every other thing people learn. And so there should never be a grind to it. It should always just be fun. I mean, you can't learn anything else that way. You can't, you have to kind of practice when you're learning the oboe. You practice when you're learning to play soccer. You practice with every single thing you're learning. And you also need to practice with math. And that's what neuroscience shows. And practicing it, maybe doing a little bit of these interleaved drill kind of things that aren't really long, but having these little, it's kind of like you go out and you do your sprints as an athlete. And, is it always fun? No, but it gets your brain in gear. And I mean, if you're learning something like how to ride a bicycle, it's painful. You fall off a lot. It's really kind of a bummer, but kids do it because they can see other kids flying around on the bicycle. It's harder to see the beauty of mental sports. So we have to help them get through that drudgery of the initial falling off the bike stage when you're learning things like multiplication tables and so forth. But once you get them into the more beautiful stages of math, which can sometimes not be even until they hit calculus, if you can get through those sort of sometimes harder early stages, they will love they can fall in love with it. And even if they don't fall in love with it, that's okay. They still will have the mental skills they need to be a good citizen.
I love that beauty of the mental sports. I think that's a great way of like putting it as well. And I think I could be on this question for a long time, but I know that I'm going to be telling Lauren to get off the screen, but like I need to get myself off the screen as well, because we only have a certain amount of time for each question in the conversation. So it's so good that the takeaways from that space and like the visuals that you share. Barbara, thank you so much for coming on. And thank you, Phil, for asking the question as well, because I was definitely in that space too. We have Daniel. I love what you said, but we can go more deeper into like this as well. But like it's interesting that teachers must break down the procedural process to model their thinking for cognitive appreciative effect. And like I think that's like we have to model it, but also we have to be able to understand it too. And I think it's just so important. But I'm gonna press pause on this segment because I'm just loving the conversation. But we're gonna have to go on to the next part too with Lauren.
We could have gone the whole time on all
I know.
I mean, even just that. So I quickly have to say that. So stepping through procedures is declarative. So even though we say procedural learning, it's through that basal ganglia, but it's a pattern recognition system. So it's a really confusing set of terms. When we say you're doing a set of procedures, that means you're doing something declaratively.
So you're declaring the steps, but then whenever you're going through the procedural, it's more just not like it's more the pathways already. It's not as out that way.
Right. It's like you got to get a bunch of examples to really understand it. Like Rubik's Cube, you got to solve it a bunch of times. Like tying your shoe, you got to try it a bunch of times. So it's very different pattern recognition and implementation system.
I'm excited to go in deeper. That's the first time I've heard that space as well. So Daniel said I got it. So like it's really cool to actually. But I'm really excited to explore it more because the last time you were on, you introduced me to focused and diffuse mode, and I use that all the time now with this space. So thank you so much. I'm going to definitely be looking more into that as well. So I'm going to take Phil. That's you off the screen now. Thank you so much,
Phil.
Oh, bye, Barbara.
End of the session, we'll do a little get together as well. So hope you enjoy the rest of the session whenever you're here. We're going to bring Lauren back on. Hello, Lauren. I know this is of the whole space trying to end the segment when you're so involved in the session as well. So good luck to you.
It was a great conversation. I can see why you had difficulty ending that. It's because learning is infinite. It keeps going. So it's hard. There's no end in learning. So it is difficult to put a period on the end of the conversation, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. I'm going to take myself off
you
the
nailed
screen.
it.
But yeah, Jenny on now coming on for our second.
Okay. There we go.
Hi, Ginny.
Hi.
Hi. We're welcoming you onto Empathetic Educators Live. We're so happy to have you here. And you know, I just followed you today on Twitter, and I was scrolling through your Twitter feed, and what you tweeted something recently, very interesting. Ginny said, recently I've had conversations with members of the staff where we begin to discuss a problem. We choose to park it for a while, and by the end of the day, someone has found a solution. It is such a great way to give our brains time to work through the problem at our own pace. And as soon as I read that tweet, I went, ooh, that's focus and diffuse mode, right? You're focused on thinking about the problem, talking about the problem, and then you let the day pass. And then you come up with these wonderful solutions when you're connecting the dots in that diffuse mode. So I had to bring that tweet up. I thought it was wonderful, and you gave me a great idea for the way I approach problems now. So that's wonderful. So can you please introduce yourself to the community here, and then ask your question to Barb?
Brilliant. Yeah, thank you. I just have to say, everyone else answered the question, which I think is brilliant. It wasn't, I didn't answer the question. Everybody else got there before me, which in itself is brilliant. You know, they come up and go, I've got a solution. I'm like, that is like the best thing ever. So yeah, so my name's Ginny Bootman. Thank you, Lauren, for the introduction. I'm on Twitter. I am Senko Girl. I am also can be found at ginnybootman.com. If you want to find out more about me, go on my website. And my hashtag is follow the empathy road, and 2 little red shoes I have there. So I'm the special needs coordinator of 2 primary schools in England. I have been a head teacher, I've been a senior manager, and now I've found my place, which is a lovely place to be. So I'm special needs coordinator. I speak and I write about all things to do with empathy. I've got a real interest in attachment. I ended up following this route because of need within my schools, and I do a lot of work following the PACE approach by Dan Hughes and Kim Golding. The PACE approach, the P stands for being playful, the A is accepting, C is being curious, and the E stands for empathy. And it's a system I use with all children within my settings that helps them to feel valued and gets to understand those children. So my question for you, Barb, is because I feel I know quite a lot about attachment and how that can be with regards to children from an early age, but can significant life experiences shape our view of empathy in either a positive or negative way? I'm thinking maybe from the point of view of such things like bereavement and things like that. Can people go down different pathways, Barb, as a result of significant life experiences?
Oh, I think that there's no question about that. And I think what I'd like to do, if I can, is I would once more like to briefly share my screen, if I can, because I'm just realizing, oh, I have a perfect picture to kind of show what I'm really talking about. So we're going to try sharing screen again. Okay. Yes, that's what I want. Boy, this is working just super. Now, where'd I put it? I know I put it someplace. Okay, here we go. So one thing, hopefully you can see pathological altruism here.
Yeah.
Okay, so an area I work in, this is an edited book that I did on pathologies of altruism. And I think one thing that can arise, many of us are really very sensitive and caring to the needs of others. And we really, really want to help others. And I think, so I've been fascinated by this, and this has been a big research area for me for a number of years. And so I remember, so I taught a course on pathologies of altruism. What is that, you might ask? It's doing good that actually results in doing harm. So you intend to do good for someone, and actually what happens is it ends up being harmful either for the person you intend to help, or even harmful for both you and the person you intend to help. So I was teaching a course on pathologies of altruism, you know, how you can kind of unwittingly do things that are completely opposite what you intend. And I noticed that everyone in the class was really excited about this concept. And we talked a lot about the different things. People were doing presentations, but there was one girl who never participated in any of the discussions. She's always very reserved, kind of sullen, and she would go in and out of the class really quickly. And then she didn't show up for a while. And finally, I called to see what was going on. And then she started coming to class again. And finally, and she started flowering. She became really happy. I mean, it was like a night and day shift in this young woman. And she finally, at the end of the class, she came up to me, sat me down and said, my brother was in a very severe depression, and I was trying to help him. And what I didn't realize I was doing was, rather than reaching a hand down into the pit to help haul my brother out, I was actually reaching a hand down and he was hauling me down into the pit with him. And it was only when I began to realize that I could feel with what he was doing, but I should not feel what he was feeling. I should not be empathizing to the extent that I was actually feeling what he was feeling, because that was just bringing me down with him. And I couldn't help him when I'm down in the pit with him. But I thought I was doing the right thing by all of that. And it wasn't until I kind of stepped back and actually got a little emotional distance from him that I was actually able to see what was going on more dispassionately, help myself, and in that way be better able to help him. So I think sometimes simply how we are framing, how we view helping others can either hurt us or help us, hurt others or help others. And so we just need to be very, very careful, because empathy seems like it is the best thing in the world, but it can totally be a double-edged sword. So, empathy can be helpful for others, but it can also allow others to manipulate you. So, there's just lots of good and bad aspects of empathy, and we're wise to be aware of these kinds of things.
I agree. I think what I've learned is very similar, that when we empathize within our mind certain boundaries, because we can allow others to, as you say, we can be pulled down or taken along by others. I think that's maybe a better way of taken along by others. And actually we have to give ourselves time, or give ourselves time again, Lauren, give ourselves time and consider. I think that's a really important part of when we're empathizing as well, to just stop, think, give ourselves time to think about the situation we're in or somebody else is in, and then make a more informed decision, really, isn't it?
It is. And I think this is important for children too, because especially young girls are often enculturated to, you must be kind to others. So then what happens is, as adults, this can lead to what is called codependency. So if your partner might be beating you, you're thinking, well, I've got to be nice to him. I'm just not being nice enough. It's my fault, because we haven't taught, especially young girls growing up, we haven't taught them to, that sometimes you need to set limits. It's okay to say no to people. Setting boundaries is okay. We instead emphasize that wonderful idea of empathy, helping, caring, instead of, sometimes you got to set those boundaries because you don't want to grow up and have people, taking advantage of you unfairly.
And children like boundaries, children like limits. In my experience, sometimes I've thought, gosh, I've got to say something and put those boundaries up that a child might not like. Barb, they like it. They surprise me. Oh, okay. Yep. They're the rules. That's absolutely fine. So I absolutely agree. I absolutely agree with what you're saying. It's empathy within those acknowledged. It's the acknowledged limits, isn't it?
Yes, I couldn't agree more. And I'm sure you probably have millions of examples from your procedural system that have given you a great deal of insight into how to set those boundaries, which I think we all sometimes find difficult to know, when, especially like if a student is overstepping boundaries, how do you appropriately manage that? I've always struggled with that myself.
Yeah, you're both bringing up such incredible points. One of the things we try to teach our learners, and one of the ways I try to live my life is through an empathetic lens. And we do this in so many ways with our learners, and I do it with myself. Through literature, through trying to understand other characters and their experiences and what they're going through. To try to understand one another's stories within our own spaces, within our own communities. But I never thought about teaching my learners that empathy can sometimes bring us down this rabbit hole of negativity as well if we don't stop and pause in that space. Because somebody like me, for example, I tend to take on other people's emotions because I'm a very feeling person. Mm-hmm. I'd like to think of myself as somebody who has a big heart, and I want to help others. But sometimes as you're having this conversation, I'm reflecting on that because it does bring me into that stressful, negative space because I'm having empathy for that person.
Yeah.
So it could be suffocating at times when you are a very empathetic person because you're thinking that's a great thing because it is a great attribute to have. It's a great character trait or a great personal trait to have. But I never looked at it as the double-edged sword. So thank you for bringing that up to the community here because I think that's important not only to reflect on as adults, mm-hmm. but to teach our learners, the students that we're with, that yes, we should have empathy, but we need to set those boundaries as well.
Mm-hmm. Yep, couldn't agree more.
Yep.
So is there anything, Ginny, to just wrap this up, such a great question, anything else you want to add before we go back to Naomi? And on to the next question.
I think it just comes back to walking alongside, feeling with, but not taking it away. You are not taking what somebody is feeling away from them to the detriment of yourself. Brené Brown says about going into the whole walking alongside. And sometimes, Lauren, we say, do you know what? I don't know what to say because of what you're going through. And actually, maybe there is somebody else who can help you on this occasion.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Wow. Yes. I think we can all feel as humans that bit of guilt that if somebody's coming to us for help or for motivation or inspiration, and, we're really digging deep inside ourselves to try to help that person, but we're just not finding the right words, or maybe we don't have the right experiences and background to help that person. I think being vulnerable, like Brené Brown always says, being vulnerable is one of the best attributes we could have, and to be honest and maybe to direct them to somebody else who can help them. So that is a great point.
Well, I have to interject. So one thing I think that it's never really spoken about, but that we should also bring up here, because I would bet people have experienced this. There's a phenomenon, I call it being a sticky student. And but there's actually psychological terminology related to individuals with this. But you can never, ever, ever give that student enough attention. However much you give, they will be wanting more. And if they sense they have reached the limit today, they will be back the next day. So I think sometimes, and it's certainly not every student at all. It's a small percentage, but sometimes we also need to be aware of students whose needs can be so overwhelming that you can actually end up neglecting your other students, your family, and your own needs because you're trying to give to this student who can sometimes be sort of like an endless set of needs. So I think it's important to kind of bring that out, and verbalize that, because we teachers often give so much, and we can lose sight of the fact that our needs are in many areas, with many students, with our families, with ourselves, and we can go so far out on a limb, trying to help a student who can never get enough help, because that's part of, they're not looking for the actual help so much as your attention, and you can't give attention all the time. So I think it's just good to be aware of that. You need to be very careful that you're not excessively, focusing on someone who's not really looking for help per se so much as simply your attention, because your attention needs to go in many areas as a good teacher.
Barb, I think you just wrapped this up and tied it with a bow so beautifully. Yes, and I think not only for our students, but in every facet of our life, there could be people in our family who are like that, friends who could be like that, and it really depletes the energy. It can deplete the energy within you when you have other places to expend it. So thank you so much for that. And Ginny, thank you for this wonderful question. I think it's time now just to move this along to come back to Naomi and on to the next question. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you both.
Oh, but I can't hear you.
You're on mute.
I am. I wasn't on mute before, and then I had to put myself on mute, and now I didn't take myself off. But I think that's just like such a great conversation, is because I was actually talking to George Couros about this. This is why I'm so passionate about empathy, as I think it's the most important, such an important skill. But I was talking about the fact that I did get so weighed down in my first year of teaching because I was being so empathic. I was being so like understanding, weighing everyone's problems. And but I think I said the statement, it's empathy, but not at the expense of ourselves. And so like not expending yourself towards other people. And that's what I always say now, and that's what in my mindset is, if I feel like I'm giving too much, it's putting that boundary like you guys talked about in place to be able to say, no, that's given me too much of that place now. But also like what Barbara say about you actually being down in the pit doesn't get either of you out. That's what I've kind of been saying to myself as well, is if I'm down there with the person, then I'm trying to help, but I'm not actually helping because we're just stuck in the hole together. But it's actually been able to say, like, how can we have that perspective? How can we have that distance from each other too? So yeah, I love that conversation because it's just so important I'm really passionate about empathy, but it's also not at the expense of ourselves or others. So yeah. Great conversation. So Lauren, you are off screen. I am chucking off. And we're bringing Andrea onto the show. Andrea!
Hello. Hi, Barb. So good to see you after watching you early this morning as I was preparing my questions.
Oh, well, hopefully I wasn't too inapropos.
No, it's great. It's great to have Andrea was actually on the show we were reflecting on one of your sessions about focused and diffuse and diffuse mode. And Andrea has amazing takeaways. She actually has a podcast all about neuroscience, and I really enjoy like going in depth into the people that she works on too. So yeah, Andrea, give us a little introduction to yourself and about you.
Sure, absolutely. Barb, just so you know who I am, Andrea Samadi. I started the Neuroscience Meets Social Emotional Learning podcast almost 3 years ago now to bridge the gap with teaching practical neuroscience for educators in the workplace. And people can see everything that I do at achieveit360.com. have a look there and see the programs and services that we offer for schools. But the basic idea is to take leaders like yourself and take the books that you've written and then make practical tips for educators to implement. And so I was thinking, like, what's a current issue that everyone's asking about? And I talk to people when I'm out hiking, educators I know, what's bothering you right now in education? And something I came up with would be, what would be a good starting point to think about what to do with the losses and gains that we've experienced with the pandemic with distance learning? So, our students have been wearing masks. What's that done to their self-esteem? Where should we start with the past year?
I think that the way to move forward is to forget the past. So don't think of yourself as a victim of the masks and the inability sometimes to gather good information about learning or to take classes or something. Just that way lies danger. You want to be thinking positively about what's ahead and with excitement and enthusiasm. So if you simply lay out a plan of what you're going to do next to get yourself going with your learning, that's so exciting. Because even if we're still learning some online, I have to tell you about one of my favorite athletes of all time. His name is Julius Yego. And Julius, he is an athlete from Kenya. And if you know anything about Kenya, they're super famous for their long distance runners. And so I'll have a little water here.
You've been talking a lot. Yes, definitely hydrate.
So now you see my husband behind me there. But so Julius was he wanted to learn to throw the javelin. And the funny thing is, there's like no javelin throwing coaches in Kenya. And yeah, he couldn't afford to go any place and actually learn to throw the javelin. So what did he do? He started watching YouTube videos. He'd watch a YouTube video, go out and practice on his own. Watch a YouTube, go practice. Simply like 99% by doing that, he won the world champion in throwing the javelin. And I think what we can often forget is, there's just this whole incredible amount of material that we can learn from online. And we've just been taught that, online learning is never as good. Actually, there's plenty of evidence that it's superb in helping learners of all ages to improve in their abilities, in whatever they're learning. In fact, some of the things that it kind of drives me crazy. So some of the biggest experts on online learning and how it's not as good as face-to-face. Actually, if you watch some of their presentations where they're talking about that, they'll have a book over on the side. So it's their book about, online learning is not so hot in some sort of, mildly put terminology as the title of the book. And they will stand there for an hour with their book at the side talking about how terrible online learning is. And it's terrible. It's a perfect example of why they think online learning is so bad. It's because, well, guess what? They don't know how to teach online. So there are fantastic materials online, and we can learn a great deal online. Parents can use these fantastic materials to teach online. So we just have so much available. There's so much ahead. There's so much that people can lay out and actually learn, no matter what their age, that I think it's an incredibly exciting time. So if you frame it that way mentally, you'll actually be able to move ahead into the future in a fantastic way.
Love it. Thank you so much. That was powerful. You took the ideas that I was thinking of this morning. I was watching your diffused and then connecting it to brain network theory. It's so important to have those breaks And then thinking about, well, when my kids were home, they were taking more breaks than they were used to, and that it's okay to take those breaks because that brings the creativity in. And so just trying to reframe it that, I can look at it both ways. There was some loss. I noticed definitely some things were lost, but there were a lot of gains. So I like what you said, forget the losses, reframe.
Yep. And besides, like, when your kids are old, they'll be saying, when I was a kid, boy, we had to tough it out. It was such an incredible experience. And you kids have it so easy now. So they've got these wonderful stories that they can, be telling their grandkids.
I just really like, because that's why I love this question, because like you said, Andrea, it is really topical, but it's yes, those things did happen to us, and accepting that they did, because some of the I was definitely in a lucky position. Some people have really had it rough during this time, but like you said, looking backwards isn't actually going to help, but it's kind of understanding where we've come from to go to the next step. And so it's really important to actually have those balances between the two of them. So yeah, I really like the idea of looking to what we have gained and talking about those conversations as well, for the both of them.
And I think a wonderful opportunity that's come out of all of this is that people are starting to realize, wow, an important part of education should be, should consist of some of the wonderful materials that we have available online. So I think education in the future, despite this little burp over a year and a half, is actually going to move forward even more positively.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I think we're going to bring everyone. We're actually coming to the end of the show, actually. So we're going to bring everyone back onto the screen, so we can put us all back on. It's just really good to. Lauren frozen again, but it's fine. She'll come on. It's just been really good to have all these conversations for us to come together, and I think we've had the empathy part of it, we've had the actual programming of our brain part of it, we've had the looking forward to the future part of it. I think all these different spaces are really important so that we can move forward with each other with this space. But I've loved the practical takeaways of it. I've loved, Barbara, the way you're saying about that online learning is so important, but it's what it looks like. So you have been putting it up on the screen, you've been showing us little videos, you've been showing us little takeaways for it too. And I think that's what a really great thing is what does it actually look like for us as teachers, but also for learners as well. So yeah, it's been we've gone all over the place, but it's really nice to have all those different places in the conversation too. So thank you. So we're going to end with a little would you rather, a little bit of fun at the end. So we've got Ivo Hanan, and he's got great quizzes that he does online, and so he's going to come on, he's going to say a would you rather question, and I'm going to use the same as the last show because it's very topical at the minute because we haven't been able to travel. So let's have a little insight into that.
How's it going, everyone? So I've got a quick question for you. Would you rather have unlimited international first class tickets or never have to pay again whenever you go to a restaurant? Choice is yours.
So like I said, it's very topical at the minute because we haven't been able to fly or maybe even go to restaurants. So what do you think? Would you rather have unlimited flights or be able to go to the restaurants as well for the food? So first class tickets for flights. Barbara, we'll start with you. What do you think?
Oh man, I want to fly. I would fly anywhere at the drop of a dime. So yeah, that's my vote.
Everyone else, what do you think? Are you on the flight mode or
flight?
Yes, I'm ready to go. I'm ready to go. I'll go anywhere at this point. No, I very much love to travel when I can. So that's very tempting for sure. And I want to visit you, Naomi. So I'll come to you first.
You can also plan. You're all welcome in my one little studio apartment. We can all fit in. Phil, would you say you were flights as well?
Yeah, I think I love to cook. So I mean, right now we are ordering in quite a bit. Vancouver's restaurants are fairly locked down. They have been for the last year. But I've always loved to cook. I took foods in high school, and but get me back on a plane, especially first class. I've only flown first class a couple times when I've got bumped up. And if I can take my family with me, we can go all over the place. So looking forward to those adventures again one day.
Nice. And Jenny, would you be a foodie or a traveler?
I would not fly at the moment because I've just bought a narrowboat. So I am very excited about staying home and just being able to just go 20 minutes from my house, get on my narrowboat, and my holiday just begins when I get on the narrowboat. And then I'll just have all that food coming to me. But I think just the calmness and the tranquility of being on a narrowboat is what I need at the moment, and I love it. So yeah, I'm bucking the trend a bit. I'm just going to enjoy my narrowboat and enjoy the food.
We've been watching these narrowboat videos, by people with narrowboats. I had no idea. It's like the most awesome thing. So this is why Ginny is choosing what she's choosing.
Yeah.
Love it.
Everyone, find a narrowboat.
You might have started a new craze there, Ginny. You might have maybe old. Yes, I never even heard of that before. And Mel joined in. She said 100% unlimited flights for her too. So yeah, it's I think everyone's needing that, even though it's on a boat or a plane. Everyone needs a little bit of travel, a little bit of adventure now coming into the new year. So really grateful for everyone coming on, and it's just been really great to have these questions, and throughout the whole past 6 weeks, 7 weeks, just people coming on in the chats on Twitter and like just reflecting on the book, reflecting on Barbara's work. Really, really grateful to have everyone's insights and sharing that, but also having Barbara on the show to reflect on her work as well. So thank you, Barbara.
Oh, you're very, very welcome. And Ginny, let me know if you need my husband and I to help you with the narrowboat or longboat.
Invite for you, Barb. Don't you worry. Don't you worry. You bring the food.
Okay, it's a deal.
Thank you so much, Barb, and all the wonderful educators here, Ginny, Andrea, Phil. It was wonderful to have you here. Some really great conversations, and I learned a lot tonight. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you for the co-host again.
So
Lauren, come on. Yeah, Lauren coming on as co-host, fabulous co-host again. So yeah, thank you so much for coming on, guys. And just a little shout out for Empathetic Educators. If you've enjoyed it, if you've enjoyed what we're doing, then you can subscribe on the YouTube channel, or you can sign up to the podcast and the app as well. So just a little shout out, because we've got lots of more fun things coming up in the new seasons too. So I'm really, really grateful for everyone involved and for everyone who's listening online or who's joining in the chat online too. So really, really grateful, and hope you have a lovely evening, a lovely afternoon, or a lovely day wherever you are in the world at the minute. So thank you, and we will see you all later.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye. Thanks.